So today we're going to talk about the meta on Bind, and like we did yesterday with Acend, we're going to start off by going back in time to Masters Copenhagen to see where the meta was and how it might have changed and where the meta might be heading. So going back to Masters Copenhagen a couple months ago, basically there was only two ways to play Bind. There was these two comps. These were the only two type of comps that were played by multiple teams in that entire tournament, and they are the Chamber comp, which is essentially a Brim, Raze, Sky, Chamber, and Viper, and then a Dbl Initiator comp, which is basically the exact same for the most part. There were some variations run, as you can see, where some teams would go with Astra instead of Brim, FPX would go with KO instead of Sky, but basically the main gist of it was that you were trading a Chamber for a Fade, and pretty much everything else was the exact same. And these two comps, as I said, made up the vast majority of games on Bind at Masters Copenhagen. Now, this Chamber comp, as you, I'm sure, could probably guess, is a very strong defensive comp. And we've got Optic here, who are one of the pioneers of this comp and one of the best teams, perhaps the best team in the world on this map using this comp. They like to run, some setup like this, right? You've got the Chamber Trap here in Hooker. Another common place would be down here on Short as well. You got this Viper wall coming across here. This is a very common Viper wall that you'll see a lot of different teams use as well. And, obviously, this comp is just extremely good defensively, right? You've got obviously the Chamber who can get into little cubbies across the map, right, and push in different angles across the map. And if you've got someone like Ye, that's going to be extremely efficient for you to do that, and Ye's going to get a lot of kills. You have the info of the Chamber Trap, of course. You've got the info of Sky. You've got a ton of stall utility between the Raze Nade, Brim Molly, Viper Mollies, Viper Orb, right? Like there's a ton of delay as well in there. It's just a very, very strong defensive comp, as I'm sure you all could imagine. And it ends up playing out like this in this game, Optic versus Pickrates, in this instance back at Copenhagen, where Optic absolutely destroyed Pickrates on this defensive side. You've got Ye pushed up into this cubby. This is a very common occurrence. He gets a kill, he walks away. They go pushing as a team out of showers as well. They get another kill, and we're just in a 5v3. And this happened a lot, right? And there's just nothing for Pickrates to do, and Optic just dominate. When it comes to the attack side for this Chamber comp, one of perhaps the most powerful tools that this comp has at its disposal is the Viper setup. The common Viper setup, whether it be a wall like this or a slightly angled one, and the Viper Orb in here, basically just blocking off all vision from this area down short here. And you're going to see that Fnatic in this bonus round, they're going to manage to basically just walk in onto the site and just plant the spike without even needing to take a single gunfight, right? And that is a common occurrence, and a common way that you will see this comp work is that, this Viper wall, this Viper setup can get you a lot of space down A, and, then use that essentially to, your advantage. Now, commonly the Chamber Trap comes in here, which is a very good way of, stopping any flanks, very good for the post plant as well to give you that information. And that's basically, how this comp works. You'll see teams like Optic try and take showers or the extremities a lot with this comp as well. That's something that they like to do, and then maybe pressure the other side and come back. But you're going to see in this round, the Fnatic, this is their bonus round, that they're just able to walk up. They put their Viper stuff up, and no one has, this has been around for like a year, by the way, this Viper setup, more than a year, and still no one has been able to really come up with a good solution to stop it regularly and consistently. Even though they have Bulldogs in this round, look, Fnatic just walk onto the site and plant the spike, right? Like that's just kind of how this can work sometimes, and then they end up in a great situation because this comp is very good at defending. Right now they essentially become the defending team, and if that Chamber Trap was put in a normal location, not quite sure why they put it in this area for this round, but if it is here like it normally is, then you don't have to worry about the flank as much either if you planted the spike. And now you have your Viper mollies, you have your Brim mollies, you have your Raze Nade, right? You have a ton of utility to potentially use as well for that post plant. But what about when we replace that Chamber for most likely a Fade like many teams have done? Well, we can take a look here at Fnatic versus Guild, going back to the qualifiers for Copenhagen, where both teams are actually running that kind of comp. Actually, Fnatic have gone with an Astra here instead of a Brim, but, it is basically the same comp. And one thing that you will get on the defensive side, of course, is perhaps a better retake than you would with a Chamber. By adding in that Fade, obviously, you get the Fade Haunch, you get potentially the ult, like we're going to see here. You're going to get, obviously, the Prowlers as well, right? Your retakes in general will probably be just a bit better. Now, Fnatic even went with the Astra as well, which just gives you even more combo potential. Obviously, you have the Seize Nade potential as well, which can be very powerful on a tight spaced map like Bind. And, you just end up perhaps with slightly better retakes overall, and some of that more combo potential, and some more active information gathering as well, obviously with the double Prowlers and the Haunt. And on the attack side, obviously what the Fade can grant you is just that ability to overwhelm people with utility, and or just, clear out some of them close, ratty corners that exist on Bind again. Like here, you've got Optic hiding in the smoke, right? This could be very dangerous if we are playing, without a Fade. For instance, we've just used the Skydog to come out of showers and onto the A site. This could be a setup that would work against a Chamber comp, but against the Fade comp, the Prowler's going to see you're going to get spammed out. And actually, Optic do manage to get one because there's actually two people in the smoke, and perhaps they didn't expect it. But overall, a Fade will be good for stuff like that. I suppose it's going to clear up FNS there as well. And obviously, your site execs are going to be just a bit better overall with that Fade instead of the Chamber. But moving on from Copenhagen to Champs, we actually did see a bit of a shift overall. There began to become some other teams running some other comps, maybe experimenting with something different after the Chamber nerfs. For instance, we saw a bit of a return of the Acend comp, the old Acend comp where you're running a Sage instead of a Chamber, and we'll get to that in a second. And we also had multiple teams going for a very aggressive Jett Raze comp, adding in the Breach as well, and going for that. And so these were all the comps that multiple teams did run in Champs, and you can see it is a bit more varied. And when we're talking about the Acend comp, one big advantage this comp has is that you don't need a ton of control to get the spike down, and that is what this comp really excels at. And it was meta once upon a time, and we'll get to why it's not really the meta anymore because of some changes that happened in the past. But basically, let's just take a look at the map, right? Team Liquid here on the attack side, they have almost, no real control of the map, right? They're all just kind of grouped up in this area. They don't really know what's going on behind them, but none of that matters because they've got a Sage wall down here, and they're just going to plant the spike in this tiny little corner right here. And now you have things like a Brim Molly, a Raze Nade, Viper Mollies, Viper Orb, to all go on that spike and just delay as much as you possibly can. Obviously, they need to destroy the Sage wall as well. You see, Yuppie's going to try and get ratty here. He's actually going to miss his shots and die, but there you go. You've got Brim Molly, right? You're going to have other things coming in there as well. Here goes a Raze Nade, right? You get the idea of what Liquid are trying to do here, and they are going to manage to win this round. A Viper Molly just went on the spike as well. The Brim Molly manages to get a kill. I think we're actually going to get a knife kill in this round as well, which is just amazing. It's about to come up just here. Just amazing, and they are going to manage to win this round eventually, Liquid, and that's kind of how this plays out. This comp saw a bit less play overall ever since those Viper Molly nerfs came in, right? As soon as the Mollies weren't doing as much damage as they used to, it came a bit harder to, do these setups, but you can see, particularly on something like a pistol round, it still can work. And then finally, you have the double dive comps with the Raze and the Jett together, like EDG were running, and Zeta were another team that went for this kind of comp as well, going for the Breach, going for that heavy combo, big exec type feel to how they want to play the map. And you're going to see, this is kind of what it's all about, right? A Breach Stone is going to come here. You're going to get Jett Smoke, Jett Dash, Raze Nade, right? It's going to start going absolutely crazy. The Fade Haunt comes in, a Flash comes in, right? They get stuck behind the box, Aftershock, and eventually they just end up in a terrible spot where Kankan's able to get 2 kills. That's kind of how, obviously, this comp is trying to play out. Defensive-wise, you do kind of maybe become a bit predictable in that you are still going to probably gonna have to be pretty aggressive overall to make this kind of comp work, but if you can find enough kind of set plays to make it work, then it can be very effective. When it comes to the agent pick rates from Copenhagen and coming into Champs, you can see that I would say mostly it is pretty much the same with a few outliers. Let's start with actually at the end, Chamber there coming down in pick rate overall. Now, to me, this is actually mostly going towards that Sage somewhat, where the Sage pick rate increased overall and we got more Acend comps, and because of the Sage, Chamber lost out a bit, right? And we saw teams like Liquid move away from Chamber in their qualifiers to going towards the Sage. And we also got those double dive comps as well, with the addition of the Jett, again, somewhat replacing the Chamber as potentially an op agent on defense as well. But Sky is the other big one that has seen a massive increase, but I wouldn't read too much into this overall. One of the reasons is that FPX were the only team that were picking KO, and FPX played a ton of games on Bind for whatever reason in Copenhagen. They played an absolute ton of it, and so you see KO's pick rate was almost 20% just from one team, but that obviously fell to a normal rate with just FPX again picking the KO. So So that is where Sky is getting some of that pick rate back, but also a slight decrease in Fade might have gone towards Sky as well. And when we take a look at the comp pick rates here, you can see that the main two comps are still the main two comps overall, but it's not as dominant as it was in Copenhagen. In Copenhagen, they were 85% of all comps played in that tournament were just two, essentially, which is, you know, maybe not a great thing overall. You can see it has come down a bit, and actually the Double Initiator stuff overtook the Chamber comps to be the most played comp overall. But as I said, the Sage comp came back a bit, and the Double Duelist wasn't present at Copenhagen, did come back a tiny bit as well, with two teams trying it out. But you can see that the Double Initiator was played by more teams overall, but Optic, Fnatic, and Accept were the only three teams running the Chamber comp at Champs. But Optic and Fnatic running the base Chamber comp were very, very successful. They only lost one game between them, and they looked like the best two teams on Bind. So I think overall, going forward, what you can probably expect is that we'll still see a decent balance between the Double Initiator and the Chamber comps overall. But I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, people looked at Optic and Fnatic and just thought, well, they look like really good teams on Bind, maybe let's just copy them. And again, the Chamber comp might become the slightly more dominant of the two.